Hey, everybody, welcome back to Lettermen Row. I am Austin Ward, joined by Jeremy Birmingham and Spencer Holbrook. This is the practice report brought to you by Byers Auto. There's one more open viewing period with the Buckeyes as they went through. They are in the final 2 weeks of spring practice. And as I said on Friday, Birm, I just had to wait because I was going to get a Christmas gift in April, and it was 6 periods of practice this morning with the Buckeyes. You only got 2. I win.
Yeah, and you were outside, so you got the double victory because we were stuck inside and it was 28 degrees on Friday, and now what was it, 70 degrees out there this morning for you? Typical. Austin gets all the breaks.
Good things come to those who wait, and can run through a number of things that we learned here. I think maybe to start with, Mitchell Melton was on crutches on Monday. He will be out for at least the next 2 weeks of spring practice and potentially much longer. Ryan Day called it a long-term injury, didn't disclose exactly what that is, but not a good sign for a unit that we've talked about a lot at linebacker with the top 4 guys, that we know are heading off, those seniors to the NFL. Dallas Gant, who's missed spring with a foot injury, those are makes it the top 5. Now you take Milton out of the equation. This is a thin, inexperienced group. We know that there's potential waiting in the wings, but this was one of the guys that we talked about who could help. Obviously, we know that the transfer portal is an option for Ohio State, but you look at this linebacker situation, it is not ideal heading into these last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and you know there's talent there at the linebacker spot, and you know that they can get it done, but you haven't really seen it, and so there's no proof of concept right now. And then you look in the transfer portal, there's some options. Berm's talked about them. We'll probably talk about them until announcements are made and decisions are made. But for now, it's kind of just wait and see mode because there's nothing you can really do about injuries. They just kind of come. It's part of football. But at the same time, when it continues to happen to this position group, and then you also lose 4 guys and you have so much inexperience, the talent's there, proof of concept's not, and now you got issues.
Well, the one thing you can do about it is adjust, and that's what Ohio State's doing. That's why you have Craig Young playing more in that hybrid role, the safety role. You move Ronnie Hickman down into the same spot. So clearly they're saying, hey, what are we going to do? Let's try to figure out some approach that maybe solves the problem, at least not solves it, but at least gives them a little bit of a new wrinkle. And who knows, maybe that ends up panning out and becoming a part of the defense down the road. But even in that position, even in that hybrid role, you're still missing Court Williams. You're still missing the guy that would probably be the starter in it. So it has to be an extremely frustrating spring for Ryan Day and his staff because these injuries in the back half of the secondary with the veteran guys are out. So the young guys are not even 100%. And then you have the linebackers where you're replacing all 4 of your starters and you're missing 2 of the top 3 options. So that is the 2 of the top 5 options. So that's rough.
It's pretty wild when going into the spring, the conversation was about, the pass defense and replacing these spots in the back end. Then you have Sevyn Banks limited and out for part of spring. Cameron Brown was missing all of it, as you mentioned, Court Williams not being in there. I don't believe that Legend Cavazos, based on what little I've seen, has been full go. He's been doing some individual work, of course, and maybe more, but certainly not at 100% based on what I saw on Monday morning. So the bright side is that Cameron Martinez or Ryan Watts, who very impressive to me physically, the way he's changed in just a year, looked a little bit like it reminded me a little bit of Eli Apple with the length and athleticism there towards the end of his career, what he did for Ohio State. I mean, those guys are getting a lot of reps and a lot of opportunity, but that is really patchwork right now in the back 7 on the defense. And this was supposed to be the key spring for them as Kerry Combs got a real chance to install and develop and get things fixed after a year ago. This is something that's obviously going to have to carry over into August.
I think, yeah, and it's an opportunity for Denzel Burke and Jansen Dunn to step up as the 2 of, the Buckeyes signed 6 defensive backs in the class of 2021, but only 2 of them enrolled early, unlike the wide receiver room where all 3 did. So it's really key for Denzel Burke and Jansen Dunn. And Denzel Burke, as we talked about with Matt Barnes last week, has already been impressive.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Berm and I always talk about on Talking Stuff, which also is presented by Byers Auto, thank you, Byers, is the positional versatility that Ohio State recruits with on defense. Ohio State doesn't really recruit to a position on defense. It more just recruits athletes that they think can fit the mold of what they want in that position. Now you're starting to see that come to life where you have to shuffle some of these guys around. You have to figure out a little bit of patchwork, but also it's where your recruiting's paying off because you know that, hey, this guy we recruit and play safety, he can come down in the box and play linebacker as well. So I don't think it's a blessing in disguise what's happening right now. It's very concerning. But at the same time, you are finding out a little bit more about each of these guys as you continue to shuffle them around and figure out where they go.
Offensively, it certainly appears that Ohio State is much more settled. Ryan Day has talked over and over. He's not going to name a starting quarterback at this point and probably won't until a couple of weeks of camp in August. But Berm, based on what you saw on Friday for a couple periods, what I saw on Monday with 6 periods, the same guy continues to be getting the first reps for Ohio State at quarterback. I was going to be surprised if CJ Stroud didn't win the job eventually for Ohio State. Nothing has changed with 2 weeks left in spring ball. He looks like the clear-cut leader here to replace Justin Fields.
Yeah, and we know Ryan's not going to say anything about that, but certain things just sort of happen naturally. And one thing we've noticed about the football team in the last handful of months is that they do kind of gravitate towards CJ Stroud a little bit as far as, you know, who they're expecting to be the leader. And so that manifests itself on the field when you start to see those first reps every single time being taken by Stroud. At some point, it's about him expecting that he's the guy and acting like it. And so, you know, I think that that's as good a sign as we're going to get throughout the spring. And I would be pretty surprised if Ryan Day even reveals the starter up until like 3 days before the first game of the season. So, but definitely what we're seeing is an offense that is light years ahead of the defense as far as who's going to be where.
Yeah, I haven't been able to see practice. You guys have seen the reps, but what we know about all these guys is that CJ Stroud probably has the highest ceiling of the two that were in the room last year. And then Kyle McCord is just a step behind them because he wasn't there last year. And so I think when all of that comes together and then the leadership aspect and like Berm said, all this manifesting on the field, it just makes a lot of sense that Stroud is starting to take those steps. He's starting to take those reps and it's starting to kind of, you know, shake out the way we expected it to, even though we don't really have an idea of how exactly it's shaking out. But I think that there are some signals that it is playing itself out on the field.
One spot where Ohio State does have to wait there is with Harry Miller at center. So that job has turned into a race currently in spring between Luke Whippler and Matthew Jones. It would appear that Luke Whippler has the edge there. They did some half-line work on Monday morning, but when the full group was together, you had Josh Fryer at left guard and Luke Whippler at center. Somebody on this panel has been talking about Josh Fryer quite a bit emerging. Looks like that person, whoever it is, might have been right.
Sometimes you look for telltale signs, and when you talk about a telltale sign, here's one: someone who's 6'6", 320 pounds, and can move like a tight end. That's generally a telltale sign that guy is good. And so that's what Josh Fryer does, and he's one of those guys that, as Spencer alluded to, the positional versatility, where he was recruited as just an offensive lineman. You don't know where he's going to fit, and you know, as these other guys are trying to get healthy, he's just learning the offense and plugging away. And the key thing for an Ohio State offensive lineman is to be consistent. And that's what Josh Fryer's been. And that's why he's taking a lot of those first reps with the other guys that are going to be starters.
And I think I don't want to give myself a little bit of credit. I'll still give Berm credit for Josh Fryer, but I think somebody talked about Luke Whippler a little bit on one of these shows recently.
That was probably me.
I think Luke Whippler has a chance to really stake his claim in this as guys are unhealthy and we're shuffling people around and seeing where this offensive line fits together. Luke Whippler is a smart guy. He came in as a 4-star center, kind of the same mold as Harry Miller, kind of a nerd, if you want to describe them like that, with very smart guy, very cerebral. Just puts his head down and works. I think that's how you would describe Harry Miller. That's how you describe Luke Whippler. They're kind of similar people, and then you get them on the football field and they're just nasty. And Luke Whippler has that nasty streak, and I think that's going to help him in this. And I think he's got a real chance to make a claim for this starting job heading out of the spring in the next 2 weeks.
That's probably just why you shouldn't call him a nerd.
Yeah, because he's very mean.
Yeah.
No, I think it just goes to show, like, I mean, again, I've talked about this before, but Ryan Day said when he took over the job as the head coach from Urban Meyer that his biggest concern was rebuilding the offensive line room at Ohio State. And now, like, I mean, we could talk about 10 dudes that are like legitimately have a chance to play and play meaningful minutes or start. I mean, we don't even talk about DeJuan Jones, and we sort of gloss over Harry Miller as who was, you know, a 5-star offensive lineman. And there's a ton of kids who can play. And you're going to see throughout this spring and throughout the summer for Ohio State, as it really starts to shake out, that they're in a really great position at that spot.
Yeah, still a couple weeks to go here. Then the summer training camp in August. We're going to have it all covered as best we can at Lettermen Row. We really appreciate Ohio State coach Ryan Day, sports information director Jerry Emig, and Do It All Quinn Temple for allowing us to get a glimpse of this halfway through spring, expecting to be able to do that and have coverage for you coming out of the spring game a week from Saturday. I think there'll be some people in the stands as well. We'll get to that in the days ahead, but a lot more coverage coming to you, a lot more practice reports brought to you by Byers Auto on the way. Stay with us for that. That's Birmingham and Spencer Holbrook. I'm Austin Ward. This has been the practice report brought to you by Byers Auto. Stay with us for full coverage of the Ohio State Buckeyes at lettermenrow.com.